Perfect. Hello, everyone, and welcome. This is For the Love of Cooking with Chef Laura Strath. We're hoping to be joined by special guest Chef Johl Whiteduck Ringuette tonight. Let me just see if I got a few people joining in, so maybe there's some more friends joining us, which is great. Anyhow, this is week 11 of For the Love of Cooking with Chef Laura Strath. We are so glad that you were able to join us this evening. Before we begin tonight's presentation, I just wanted to lead us through a brief acknowledgement. I'm sure everyone has really been focused, had their attention focused on local media this past weekend when it was announced that the remains of 215 children were located at the Kamloops Indian Residential School. And I just think it's important that we take a moment to just acknowledge the tremendous loss that exists for those families and those communities that are grieving. I know many people are experiencing and processing this pain in their own way. I'm pleased to share that I'm sure you've seen in social media and local media that communities have been coming together to have small displays with children's shoes at local buildings. We've seen these begin in Oakville, at the downtown Oakville Library, and also at the Oakville Museum. So if you're seeking an outlet or something that you want to show your solidarity with what's happened, obviously not just in BC, as we believe there to be more mass grave sites, but if there's something that you want to do that would allow you to relieve some of that grief, I invite you to join us in Oakville at those two sites, and I'm sure that many more sites may pop up in the coming days. For those of you who are unaware of the context of the Indigenous history here in Halton, Halton, as we know it today, is rich in history of modern traditions of First Nations and the Métis, from the lands of the Anishinaabe to the Attawandaron, the Haudenosaunee, the Métis, and the surrounding Great Lakes that are steeped in Indigenous history. So we get to gather here on these treaty lands in solidarity with our Indigenous brothers and sisters and honor and respect the four directions, lands, water, plants, animals, and ancestors that walked before us, and all the wonderful elements of creation that exist. We acknowledge that where Oakville is located is the traditional territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, and they are the rightful stewards of this land. I'm just going to navigate to our instructions. I wanted to just share that with you this evening because I know that as we advertise, we are going to be sharing some Indigenous cooking instructions this evening, which we're excited to do. This being the start of National Indigenous History Month, we think it's important to highlight some of the culture that maybe Canadians haven't been celebrating as prominently and proudly as we should. And I do apologize that that had to start on a rather somber note, but unfortunately that's the reality and the unacceptable truth of Canadian history as it relates to Indigenous Indian residential schools. If you're joining us for the first time, please feel free to use the chat box to communicate. You can also private message myself. My name's Daniel. I assist the town in the moderation of our free virtual programs. You can also message with everyone in the group if you want. We do ask that you otherwise keep yourself on mute, if that's possible. If you do have a question, feel free to take yourself off mute. We've been doing this program for many, many weeks, and it's always better when there's conversation. So if you do have a question, please share it. Just remember to put yourself on mute after. Finally, this is open to everyone in the community, so we ask that everyone respect one another and be kind to one another while they're here. And I'm sure you've already heard, this program is being recorded. So we do record this program so we can share it at a later date. This allows folks that aren't able to join us live to be able to enjoy at a later date. Oh, shoot, Carrie, it says, is anyone else's volume really quiet? So I apologize if that was the case. I will try to speak up, but fortunately you won't hear much of me. Primarily you will hear from Chef Laura Strath, and I'm just going to see if we have Chef Johl in the participant waiting room. I don't see him yet, but Chef Johl from Niche Dish Restaurant in Toronto has actually shared a recipe with us for us to make this evening, and I will turn it over to Chef Laura to get us started. In the meantime, if Chef Johl comes in, we'll let him take over as well, Chef.
Sounds good. Thank you everyone for joining me tonight. That's awesome. So Chef Johl sent over an amazing recipe that he uses at his catering company. If you get a chance to look at it online, it's nishdish.com, and the catering menu looks fantastic. So he sent us over a rice dish. So it is a wild rice dish with some sauteed vegetables. So maybe while we're waiting, maybe we'll just get started on preparing our vegetables. So what he has recommended is we use some red pepper, a yellow or an orange pepper, making sure they're all local if you can. We've got some organic Canadian leeks and also some celery and cremini mushrooms. So what we're gonna get started on, let's get started on our peppers. So what we're going to do is we are going to do a nice thin slice, and then we're gonna do a fine dice. So the reason we're doing that is just so that it cooks quickly in our pan, and it will also add some beautiful color to the rice dish, okay? So for those that haven't joined me before, just to make sure if you are following along with me, that you do have a nice wet cloth underneath your cutting board, just so that your cutting board doesn't slide on your workstation, okay? So we're just going to thinly slice some peppers here. Get this all ready to go. Be mindful of your fingers. And then I'm just going to kind of bunch them all together here. And I'm just going to do a very fine chop. Okay, so you can see very small pieces. Okay. Just want to try and make them uniform so that they all cook at the same time. There we go. This is going to be such a nice, colorful dish. When I was looking at his catering menu, there's definitely a lot of vegetarian options, but a lot of really unique combinations as well.
Yeah, I was excited to see a lot of different gluten-free options also.
Yes. It's a really fun menu. Okay, so we've got a little bit here. So then we're just gonna start doing our second pepper. So again, nice thin slices. I find when you're cutting a lot of vegetables, it's nice to have your feet hit with the part. You can relax your shoulders so they're not right up into your ears. Sometimes when you're cutting a lot of vegetables for, sometimes an hour or two at a time, it can be tiring on your body. Okay.
Chef Johl, is that you who's just joined us? It looks like we have you on mute.
Hello.
Hey, Chef, how are you?
Hi, I'm very good. How are you?
I'm good. We started to jump ahead by preparing vegetables.
Okay, great. I see that. It looks
Hi, Chef.
exactly like mine.
Chef, I'm just gonna add a spotlight to you here. So Chef Laura is our resident chef here on our weekly virtual cooking program. So she's just got the group starting to prepare vegetables. So if at any point
Okay.
she's doing something wrong, let us know.
It's looking good so far. Trying to
Thank you, Chef.
go in here.
I didn't start the rice.
There.
All right, so I guess, yeah, for rice, because we're a 45-minute show, how do we need to get started on boiling rice?
I think so. Everyone has a different way of doing that.
Yeah, of course.
Are we on mute?
I would say keep going, Chef Laura, because it looks like Chef Joel is setting up his tech feed.
Okay, perfect. So I'm just going to move on to my celery here. So I'm just going to do some thinly cut celery. So again, just making sure your pieces are about the same size as your peppers, just so everything cooks evenly.
Did everyone finish up all of their asparagus soup from last week?
Wasn't it so delicious?
It was pretty good. I'm not gonna lie.
I made another batch.
Oh yeah?
I did. Okay. Nice thin slices.
Oh, looks like we have a few more folks joining us. Looks like Chef Joel's joining us from a different link here. So to be honest, guys, this is the first time today that I shopped at Whole Foods. Chef Joel was very specific in his recipe that he wanted local food, and he wanted indigenous wild rice. And so, of course, I took to Google to find out how I can make that possible, and it directed me to Whole Foods. I don't know if anyone has ever shopped at Whole Foods before, but this is almost like a different cultural experience for me. It felt like I was walking into like a totally different world. It was a lovely store, but I've really never experienced anything. Honestly, it was the Cadillac of grocery stores. You certainly pay for it on the way out, and this is by no means public condemning of Whole Foods. It was a terrific customer service experience, but wow.
I tend to buy a lot of flowers there too, because they're usually from fair trade farmers.
Yeah, well, everything there was beautiful and lovely. It is just so, like, in terms of the pricing structure is, Oma wrote, it's called the whole paycheck store. Yeah, I mean, it's tough to argue. It's definitely tough to argue. But they did have everything I needed, and I was very, very happy to find local wild rice. If anyone else has any recommendations on where you could get indigenous rice or local wild rice, be happy to take it, but Whole Foods was, pretty impressive. Even their snack bar was just terrific. All right, let me see if I can find Chef here.
How's everyone's chopping going? Okay.
Yeah. So Chef Joel, it looks like I got you on two different feeds here. You just let me know which one you want to use. I have the, it looks like I have one that's the Minicon Innovation and Design and Chef Joel.
Yeah, we thought we were using two cameras, one that goes directly on the products and then one that's on me while I'm speaking.
Okay, yeah, sure. I can spotlight them both if you'd like me to, if you want to turn them on.
Yeah, I've got, so you're not seeing any visual on the actual ingredients on the table?
On the camera that's labeled as Chef Joel, it says that the camera is off.
Ah, okay. I see everything happening on there, so I'm not sure.
Here, I'll send it. I'm going to send a link to start video, if that helps.
My partner and assistant will be here shortly, and
Hey.
usually that's how we're able to run
Yeah,
both cameras, and I'm able to instruct and then also be prepared to give the teachings while we're cooking the meal.
yeah, nope. I mean, no problem, Chef. I'll allow Chef Laura to continue just in terms of the instruction of chopping the vegetables, and if at any point there's any other additional instruction, that's, yeah, feel free to jump on.
Great. I mean, those all get sautéed. You have the ingredients, but I guess you're just prepping all the ingredients right now.
Yes,
Right.
sir.
Chef, should we start on the rice or should we hold off?
Oh, the rice should be underway. Ours is, of course, mine's already steamed and raring to go. So it's going to take you probably half an hour to boil it. So you're going to want to get it on for sure.
Okay, and then do you measure your water, or you just boil it until it's ready and strain it?
Usually 2 to 1. So it's 2 parts water and 1 part rice.
Okay.
Awesome. Thanks, Chef.
Okay.
Do you cook your rice, the wild rice and the brown rice together, or do you cook them separately?
In the steamer, we have them together. I
Okay.
do think you can actually boil them together as well.
Great.
Should we boil them together, Chef?
I think so.
Okay, let's
I mean,
give it a try.
I really steam everything, so I'm pretty sure you can boil those.
Okay. We don't have a steamer, so we'll just.
So, Chef Joel, if it's okay with me sharing, I spoke with Jody from Grandmother's Voice, and she said you were assisting with some gardening at the new location that they've been I guess fortunate enough to receive.
Yeah, I'm actually on the journey of Indigenous food sovereignty. Of course, a lot of the Indigenous food lines are either just not there or incredibly inconsistent. So about 4 years ago, I was brought Indigenous traditional seeds from 6 nations. And so I started a culinary arts program for the youth, which has now grown into a not-for-profit. So we create Indigenous teaching gardens throughout the GTA. We have 4, 2 of them are actually in the West End. And then my partner and I, Lara, who you're going to meet soon, we have our own personal business, which is actually the one you see on the screen, Mini Con Innovations and Design. So we consult, design, and implement gardens, and the not-for-profit brings the programming. So that's what's happening at the Indigenous Healing Center that Jody and Grandmother's Voices are working at. We've brought in a Haudenosaunee garden design with one of their elders, Grandma Renee Thomas Hill, and Minikan have partnership to create that design. And so it's a massive, incredible design right now with partial palisades. There's seating. It's completely interactive for the community, and it's over 75 feet and I think 25 feet wide.
Wow. So for folks that are listening and may not be aware, so I know many may attend our Thursday evening program called Planting Our Seeds, which is hosted by Grandmother's Voice, who is Jody Harbour and Sherry Sayville. But they've actually recently been given access to some land in order to develop an Indigenous Learning Healing Center right here in Halton, where there previously was no physical formal space for local Indigenous people to be able to gather. And just this year, this spring actually, they were extended the opportunity to begin this space in Milton. And I haven't been able to visit, so I can't speak firsthand to it, but Jody's just been sharing a lot of that journey about how much it's growing. And when I mentioned to Jody that, we would love to be able to feature some Indigenous cooking and an Indigenous chef on one of our our programs here, she actually mentioned that Chef Johl had his hands in the soil there as I was talking to her. So she referred that we connect with Chef Johl about sharing one of his meals from Niche Dish, which was previously in the west end of Toronto. I see there's a question from Kylie in the chat. How are we sautéing the veggies?
It's in our recipe, it simply goes into a pan with heated olive oil. Of course, bring the oil to temperature so that your vegetables that you're going to put in there do not soak up the oil. So you want to make sure your oil is nice and hot, not too hot. You don't want to burn the oil. And then you're going to just put your different vegetables. We have mixed peppers, different mushrooms, some celery. You can add onion and you can add parsley, but parsley is better to put at the end of the meal, not to necessarily saute that with vegetables. So take your 4 vegetables and saute them directly in heated oil in a pan.
So does anyone have any questions in terms of where we are in terms of the meal preparation? So Joel, to give you some context, so every week we meet and Chef Laura leads us through. Gosh, it's been all over the map. We've made, I mean, I feel like everything.
Churros.
Yeah. We've gone through many, it's been almost 23 weeks of making a different thing every week. So this is kind of exciting. So basically you're joined by a bunch of foodies.
Oh, wonderful. So exciting. I'm just curious to when I should start some of the teaching about the wild rice story and how the Anishinaabe people are known as the wild rice people and why that's so important to this region and why we all want to become a part of bringing back wild rice as part of food sovereignty for all nations and all people that are here in this great community.
Yes, sir. That would be, Chef. I think while we got the rice cooking, please. I know there's many people who are here tonight to learn. So if there's information you can share and there's direction you can give, we're ready.
So I think for starters, what we'll do is just it's going to be difficult because I don't see the second camera on yet. But hopefully, when Lara gets there, we'll be able to sort of review this a little bit more. But for those of you or who can, maybe hold up that wild rice and give people an opportunity to see how that wild rice actually looks. It's really incredible to take a deep look at the content and the feel of wild rice. And to know that this particular food source grows in low-level lakes all around this part of the nation. So Ontario particularly, we're in the heart of wild rice country. So we should be able to walk out our door and be standing in wild rice beds within a 10-minute walk. And so it's a great misfortune in that way that none of us can do that. And that is the journey of that Niche Dish has been on since 2005. We are looking all over the place for low-level lakes that aren't disturbed. And we've disturbed them for all kinds of great reasons, but also those reasons have consequences. And it's important to know the consequences. So first, to start with the story of the Anishinaabe people, who in our story, if you want to look for this resource, it's a great book. It's called Michomas, The Story of Michomas. And the Michomas story starts the Anishinaabe people thousands and thousands of years ago on the eastern coast of near the Atlantic and working their way towards the Great Lakes. And that happens over a course of 4,000 years, where we take different stops in our beginning story, our origin story. And so during that time, there came a crisis of a great food. All of our sources of food were decimated. We couldn't find the animals. We couldn't find the fish we needed, and a lot of the plants were gone. Could have been, a type of environmental change that happened at that time. But as we know the story from our ancestors and our elders, we called upon our great spirit guide. And some of you at home have heard of the spirit guide in the Anishinaabe tales. And that great spirit is known as Winnibojo or Nanabojo. And Nanabojo was this kind of great teacher and in a way a trickster, but also someone who taught the Anishinaabe people how to keep their agreements with Gitche Manitou, which is Great Spirit. So the people had many agreements that we had to keep, and that's part of the 7 fires that you hear us talking about, and covenants with the animals and covenants with the way to live as Great Spirit guided us in that way. And so at a time of great crisis, when we had very little food and we started to despair because people started to pass away, we called to Nanabojo, and Nanabojo came to us, half spirit, half human. He could take many forms. Winnebago came to the Anishinaabe people and he asked what was wrong. And we told him of our great despair. And he said he would not leave till he brought us to a new food source because we couldn't find any. So given his special gifts of being able to shape shift and move very quickly across the planet, he went for several days in a row in all directions looking for food, trying to find where the animal herds had gone to, where the fish sources were, where plant sources were, and he kept coming back night after night with nothing. So even Nanabojo began to despair, and he cried out to Gitche Manitou, which is Great Spirit or God, and he said, Father, please come to help us, because even I cannot find food for our people, and they are beginning to pass away. Please send us a sign. And he went out another day looking, and that night he came back with nothing. When he came back and he approached the fire, it was really late, and he looked towards the fire and he saw something fly off. And he didn't know what it was because it was dark. But as he approached the fire, there was a kettle boiling there, and he looked into the kettle and he saw something floating on the surface. And after a few minutes of watching it, he decided to try it, took it out, cooled it down, tasted it, and realized it was a food source, but was trying to think about where it came from. And then he thought about that request he had asked from Gitche Manitou, please send us a sign. And he thought about that bird flying off, and he realized that bird was Shishib, and that's the duck. So he thought the duck brought that food source. That's the sign. Where does the duck usually frequent? He thought about where's the nearest body of water. So he brought all the Anishinaabe people down to the water, and we began to look around the shorelines to try and find that source of food. And lo and behold, we came upon the wild rice. And from that day forward, Winnebago told the Anishinaabe people, you're now the wild rice people. And from this time forward, it is your responsibility to take care of that wild rice. And what we find out today through science, through all different times of studying the plant, is we discover that wild rice is responsible for the support to 2 million different species. Species
Wow.
of insects, species of birds, species of water life. It actually helps filter the water. So it does incredible things for our ecology. And of course it does. That plant has been here for thousands and thousands of years. So what we want to do as people who care about our environment and our ecology and the sustainability of our families and the generations to come is tell everyone, how can we help and get together and bring back wild rice into our low-level lakes to be able to sustain our ecological welfare here in this part of the world where all of this wild rice grows, and bring back the manuman. So that's the word for wild rice. That's part of the teaching. There's a much longer teaching to that, but that's the short version of it. And so we're in the heart of Manuman County, or country, I should say. And Manuman, in terms of my Indigenous sovereignty history, I can't find it anywhere. There's small amounts of it, of course, just northeast of us near Curve Lake. Some of you have heard about James Waitung, the Anishinaabe man who has dedicated his life to try and bringing it back at Curve Lake, Rice Lake, all the small lakes around there. I can't find a large enough source to support my restaurant alone. So I bring it all the way from Saskatchewan, and I'm bringing it all the way from Wisconsin and many different parts of very long distances. And so that's very concerning. And the way to resolve that is to get as many allies as we can to bring back that plant. Now, of course, planting wild rice is just one step. Bringing it back will take several years to have it grow and be able to produce a time when we can harvest it. And harvesting time is in September. And there's a beautiful wild rice ceremony that some of the smaller First Nations communities around here that have access to it, they do that ceremony. If you ever get an opportunity, go see the wild rice ceremony. It will completely open your hearts to how magnificent wild rice is.
Thank you so much, Joel, for sharing. I have actually, I'm just looking at the story of James Whiteduck. Recently, it looks like he was published just last summer about that journey. Thank you very much for sharing that story with us. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, you know, you probably heard that the Haudenosaunee people are known as the corn people. So you've got the wild rice people that are known as the Anishinaabe people, and there's many different nations that are part of that Anishinaabe family group. And the Haudenosaunee, of course, many nations. But it is, thank you, a miigwech out to the Cayugan people of 6 nations who brought me that beautiful gift of the white corn, the beans, the squash, to Nishtish, and asked us what we wanted to do with them. And of course, we know the responsibility of seeds. And that's the word of the business I was telling you about. Minikan means seeds in Anishinaabemowin. Minikan means the seed. And so when we take seeds, the teaching is you now have a responsibility to plant those and nurture those plants in the earth. So Minikan has many indigenous seeds that we love to share with all our allies and all our supporters. So if you're interested in indigenous seeds and learning a bit more, check us out at minikan.com, and feel free to make any inquiries to find out about what is indigenous agroecology and why is it so important to this part of the world, and how can we support it and how can we learn how to do it.
Thank you, Chef. I'm just writing the link to your website in the chat box function for anyone who wishes to visit Minikan Innovation and Design.
At Minikan, you'll also be able to find this incredible resource. I'll just share it with you now. It's called Grow Without a Garden, 101 Plants and Containers. And this is all about urban gardening, because so many of us don't have access to that much land. And so it's actually our role and our responsibility to share the knowledge that we have to be able to grow food in very small areas. Can be in containers within your home, out on your balcony, or even in your backyard. So it's a very exciting thing for us to be able to share. My partner and I, Lara, who has co-founded Minikan with me, to have the opportunity to share this knowledge. And Lara does all the principal lead of this work and teaching. And this is her book. And she has a smaller copy that's actually been a bestseller and sold over 12,000 copies within the city. That will teach you a whole, it's sort of the short guide to it. It's easier to carry around, particularly if you're in the garden and you're trying to access more knowledge about the plants. But you can find those on our site at Minikan if you're interested. And so how are we moving on to sauteing now?
I think we are done the sauteing. We're just waiting on our.
Right. So then you're waiting on your rice, which is going to take some time. I think if you've just put it on probably about 10 minutes ago.
I did, yes, Chef.
So we've, I thought on this end that we were actually going to be just demonstrating here too. So I don't know if you want to see any of that mixed up, or you're able to do it all there.
I'd be happy to, whatever you'd like to share on your end, yeah.
Yes, that would be amazing.
If your rice isn't ready, then it'll be hard for you to demonstrate it right at this time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering if there's another way to get this on. There we go. Now we might have another image.
Oh, there we go. Yep. So
Yep.
let me just let me spotlight that here. So it looks like it's pointing to the sky.
Should be.
If it's the
Okay,
one
so-
identified as Chef Joel, yeah, I think I see. Chef, while you set that up, if it's okay for me to tell folks, when I mentioned actually that we were going to have you on to a friend of mine, they mentioned that you were an artist that actually completed work at one of our town facilities. So Chef Joel is I believe has a current art installation located at Central Public Library branch, which is kind of cool. So if we ever do get a chance to open again, I'm hoping I can get a chance to actually see what Joel has created there. Okay, so it looks like I can see, looks like I'm beginning to see your workstation now, Chef.
Oh, great.
I'll be honest, Laura, I was not aware of history of wild rice in
No, all
Oakville at
right.
all.
How
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah. It's kind of, yeah, I always love getting a chance to hear stories, especially when it's like about place that we enjoy. And I mean, for me, it's such a small portion of the land, but my entire life has been spent in Halton. And
Mhm.
to think that it's home to, like a resource that is non-existent now is kind of depressing, especially if it existed for so long.
I know, it's a really sad thought. We were actually, my family and I were at Crawford Lake last summer, and we actually saw the Garden of Three Sisters,
Yeah.
started by Chef Johl, which was it was pretty amazing, and we learned quite a bit about the three sisters. So the three sisters being the corn, the beans, and the squash
And where was that? Crawford Lake?
at Crawford Lake. Hmm.
I believe, I mean, if Chef's listening, he may be able to correct me, but I believe he was involved in the team developing the one dish garden at Iroquois Ridge as well. We just sort of did a public information session last week or 2 weeks ago about the one dish garden. I'm not sure if it's Chef. Is that
We,
open? Oh, it's
Mini,
okay. If you turn down your speakers on the other device, yeah. But obviously, because we can't go inside now, if people are looking for a way to celebrate National Indigenous History Month, perhaps venture over to Iroquois Ridge Community Center. I believe the garden is just at the
we
entry
actually
when you
did
come in.
the design for that garden that you're speaking about.
Yeah, you did, right? Yeah. Oh, looks like we're way ahead, Chef.
Only on the vegetable part.
Yeah. This is the first time we've tried to go double chef.
There's a bunch of reverberation. How do I turn off the volume on that?
So
Speaker on it.
your audio is great now, Joel.
All right.
So we can hear you now, guys, but it looks like both of the devices are muted. I know that, so I use a second device in front of me here, and traditionally what I do is I just turn off the audio on one of the devices so it doesn't loop feedback.
Now I unmuted it. How's it now?
Okay,
Oh, there
can
you
you
go.
hear me now?
Yeah. We could hear Laura a little bit clearer. I think she was closer to the device because I believe it's
Okay,
your.
so can we turn that one off and turn this one on?
We can hear you either way.
Oh,
Joel.
you can hear us now.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So right now, Laura is just putting the wild rice, which has been steamed with the brown rice, into this bowl. All of our vegetables are sauteing right now, just as you've done already at home. We're going to, like, these things are optional. You probably saw that on the menu. You can add, if you're really lucky and you have access to indigenous leeks right now. This is the season for it. It's just, we had some very recently. These are just straight up green onion. And we're gonna add a little bit of that to this dish. It's gonna go in the pan along with our vegetables that are sauteing. And as I said, this is also optional. that's the parsley. And we just love to add as much green and as much color as we possibly can.
So,
And
Chef,
so we have a little bit of the green onion that we're going to add to this to give it a little more of that flavor, because we love having access to indigenous leeks, but we don't always get them. We actually got some in Halton. That's where we picked them last, and they taste fantastic. So we like to add them to this dish.
Chef, I wonder if I can ask if folks wanted to purchase indigenous produce or grocery themselves, where could they do that?
With that, and just pour it in here.
Where could they purchase indigenous groceries?
Wow, that's a great question. That's part of our contingency plan. As some of you may know, Nish Dish, along with so many other restaurants, hundreds of restaurants have been closed during the pandemic. And we closed shortly after it was announced. So at this time, we're working on expanding our marketeria, and that is the plan for our reopening. As the numbers go down, that's the good news we're bringing. We'll have an opportunity to bring First Nations, Métis, and Inuit goods to you at our marketeria. So Nish Dish had a very tiny marketeria. Part of one of the walls had many indigenous food products on it. We had indigenous coffee. We had indigenous wild rice, of course. We sold a variation of many different teas, and we taught about the medicinal value of the teas. And all of these things, of course, local. And so important right now. You'll find out if you look into some of our gardens, you're going to find out about the plants and the antiviral medicinal values that they have. And so we like to share about that as well. But coming to you soon as the numbers go down and it's possible to open up another market is the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit marketeria by your friendly neighbor, Nish Dish, right here. So that'll still be a few months away. We'll just keep watching the numbers and see when it's possible to get a commercial venue again and get our new line out there so that people can just come in and take them home, just like a small shopping experience. You'll be able to purchase them online and, of course, at a public venue when it's safe to do that again. So we have a few more mushrooms. These are just creminis. These are local. They're organic. That we're going to share and put into our dish that you can see here that we're providing. So awesome to have your extra hands, Laura. Thank you. And so we're just mixing around those sauteed vegetables. We're going to leave them in there for another few minutes. And then we're going to add them to this gorgeous wild rice. And we're going to throw in the rest of the ingredients that you know, because you have the ingredients there before you. And for those of you who like the bitterness of this beautiful plant, we have this here that we'll also be tossing in, because of course parsley is loaded with ascorbic acid, which is vitamin C, and we need that. We need that for our immune systems. We need that to build our bones, and it just helps support all of the vital things that we need for good health. So we'll be chopping a little bit of that. Thank you, Lara. And we'll be adding a little bit of olive oil. Now, there's a lot of times I'm going to say that I actually use sunflower oil because that's an indigenous oil. Olive oil or olives, of course, are not endemic to Canada, but what a beautiful oil it is to cook with. And of course, we love the taste of it, and it's what's very accessible to a lot of people. So olive oil is the other thing that's going to go in this dish. But if you have access to sunflower oil, please use sunflower oil if you have that opportunity. So I'm just going to put a couple of tablespoons of olive oil in there. You can use any olive oil, but again, if you have access to extra virgin olive oil that's cold pressed, it's really the one that has the most vitamins remaining in them and minerals in that. And it's the same thing I'm going to talk about with salt. Here we have a little bit of salt. Now you can use any salt. We try to encourage not to use your regular table salt that's iodized because it's just been stripped of a lot of its minerals. So what I have here is just a little bit of pink salt. This is very accessible too. You can get this in almost any place, any local market. And that's a little bit of Himalayan salt or pink salt. We're just putting
about a teaspoon of that. And it's to taste. Some people might like more. And of course, that salt has a ton of minerals still in it that our bodies need. So it's great to have that available. Then we're gonna crack a little pepper on it. Use any cracked pepper. I like the big, sort of larger crack also for vision, just to be able to see it visually. It's quite beautiful. So we've cracked our pepper in there. And now we're gonna add a little bit of rice vinegar, and that's just to give that popping taste. Everything melds together, and it's just a lovely taste on many salads. You can think of this as a salad. It's a wild rice casserole, as we call it. A couple of tablespoons of that rice vinegar, and it really changes. It really brings out the ebulliency of the flavors that are going into this dish. Now Laura's coming over and bringing all of those beautiful sautéed vegetables. So we've got mixed peppers, all local. We've got some organic mushroom. We've got some celery in there and a little bit of green onion. But like I said, you can use any onion or no onion. Some people aren't so fond of onion. I like them a lot, particularly Indigenous leek that I was talking about, which we had last week, but we don't have any available right now. And many of you live near sources of wild leeks, so feel free to go get some while they're there, just while we're in the season. Yeah, and remember never to take too many. Always leave some of the plant behind so they can regrow. Very important not to clear out any area when you're foraging food, because then it doesn't come back. So here we have all of this melange of these beautiful vegetables that have been sautéed. We're going to add just a handful of this freshly chopped parsley, which, I love. I love it because you got the sweet peppers, and then you take a little bit of the bitter and you add that with, that's what you get when you add the parsley. So a little bit of sweet, a little bit of bitter. Of course, we've got the salt and pepper and the olive oil mixed in there. And this dish is essentially ready to eat. And this is always the hard part of the teaching, is that now we have to, taste test it. Always taste test your food and make sure that you have all of the ingredients right. It might need a little more olive oil. It might need a little more salt. We don't know. You might have added too much pepper. That would be hard to correct, but stir it around. And then we'll put some in our dish so that we can have a little taste.
Thank you to your chef Laura in the room there.
I always love to have Laura with me helping out. She's usually takes care of the tech and the audio. So I thought that we would have a little more luck today, but not until she arrives. So thank you so much, Laura. Chimigwech. And here we have our beautiful dish. Laura, you're going to join me to show everyone our wonderful dish that we've made.
Just like this.
Okay, just like that. All right.
Looks gorgeous.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Enjoy.
There's a comment in the chat. Mary Ellen had finished making hers and tasted it.
Wow.
Said it was delicious, but
Really?
she added black beans.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
And then chef, could you just put this in the fridge for a later time, just to have it as a cold salad?
Absolutely. And you're going to love it in the morning. You know that you can eat this dish hot or cold. Laura and I love this dish. We used to add it to all the breakfast meals. We would add black beans to it too during breakfast with eggs. And sometimes we do wraps with it. There's so many different things. You can have it as a side with another protein. There are many, many different things you can have. You can add wild rice too. And of course, it's vegan and gluten-free. So pretty much anyone can eat this. And it supports most people's dietary needs. And adding the black bean, of course, will give you that little extra protein in there.
Well, Chef, thank you so much. I know that we only operate this program for 45 minutes, and it's funny. Someone like you and I, there's a lot we could cover with you. You're an artist, a teacher. I mean, even the amount of gardens that can be attributed to your planning here locally in the GTA with the Three Sisters Gardens is awesome. I think anyone, I mean, obviously we're lucky to have Joel here, and I open up for folks to ask questions, but certainly look this man up and what he's doing, because there's so much exciting things happening. And certainly if you're in Oakville, go check out the Central Public Library art installation and art piece that Joel has created. And then similarly, if you're up in the northeast of Oakville, check out the One Dish garden. And if you make your way into Milton, you can check out the new space that Grandmother's Voice and as Chef Joel is assisting with garden creation there as well. But any questions for Chef Joel? Oh, thank you, Marilyn. I don't know if you can see Joel, but people have been commenting, just writing in the chat as well.
Oh, wonderful. One quick thing I would add is that if you have an opportunity to go to Crawford Lake Sanctuary, particularly on a weekend at the end of June, as you know, it's National Indigenous Month. And of course, during solstice, we have all kinds of Indigenous celebrations all over the country, which is so amazing if we have that opportunity this year. And what we'll be doing we'll be doing a pop-up kitchen at Crawford Lake Sanctuary. So if you want to taste a few of our short menu items, you'll be able to access them fresh and live at Crawford Lake Sanctuary during the weekend, starting with the solstice weekend at the end of June.
Oh, how wonderful.
Awesome. Well, Chef Joel, thank you so much for your time here. Chef Laura, do you have any questions about how to finish that meal before we let?
No, I think I'm great. It's such an honor to have you here, Chef Joel. Thank you so much for taking the time to spend with us.
Thank you, Chef Laura. And you just did such a fabulous job of preparing everything and getting all of the ingredients so well organized. Amazing. Thanks so much for having me here today.
And for the listeners out there, whether or not you're watching this recorded through YouTube or for the folks who are with us live, as Joel mentioned, this June is National Indigenous History Month. On the June 21st, we celebrate National Indigenous Peoples Day. Over the course of the month, there are many opportunities for you to learn more and be more involved in Indigenous culture and heritage, just in here and around Oakville in our community. Tomorrow evening, we'll be hosting the Planting Our Seeds program, where Grandmother's Voice will be leading us through a conversation, albeit very difficult but important discussion, just to discuss some of the terrible atrocities and genocide that has come, that has been experienced right here in Canada with our Indian residential schools and the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. It'd be a very difficult conversation to join for the first time, but certainly important, and one that is coming to the forefront of a lot of conversation in Canadian homes, especially after this past weekend's news. And we certainly hope that you join us, and that with the guidance of grandmothers and other Indigenous people in our community, those folks who have experienced so much loss can start to experience some healing. And again, if you're seeking some type of physical outlet for that grief, I encourage you to contribute and visit some of our the displays of shoes that are popping up at Oakville Museum and Central Public Library. But I think that's it for tonight. Chef Joel, thank you.
I'd love to add just quickly, Daniel, as we've had that so important topic, I'd love to share with everyone who wishes to express their grief. We all love our children and we all want them to be safe when they're in school. And we know this is not the history that has happened here for Indigenous people. And the way to help us share and heal through this time is please create a little spirit plate for all of those children who have gone before us and put it down on the land in your backyard, wherever you're at, and pray for those children that they've gone through the western doorway onto the spirit world where they need to be. And in these times, that is one way that you can help us heal and help the nation heal as we come to terms with the horrendous treatment of Indigenous people and our many children who have gone lost during the times of the residential schools, which were from the 1800s right up to 1997, which two of my friends were still in a residential school in 1997. So please continue that spiritual guidance for all of us. And we thank you so much for having us here today. And please join the talk with Grandmother's Voice tomorrow, as Daniel has hosted us so well tonight and talked about this really incredibly important and devastating time. Miigwech, everybody. Thank you so much for having Lara and I here. And what a pleasure to bring the wild rice story and teachings to you and the recipe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Look forward to meeting you guys in person someday, everyone.
Right.
Can't wait till we can all be together as a community again. Thanks all. Have a wonderful evening.
Mama, peace. See you then.